For 32 years, I lived a lie. I thought I knew who I was. I thought I knew where I came from. But then I took a DNA test. Just for fun, you know? A silly ancestry thing. And what I found destroyed everything I believed about myself. My name is David. And the family I've loved my entire life? They're not actually mine. I was switched at birth. And when I discovered this, I didn't just lose my identity, I lost my entire family. If you're ready to hear how I uncovered one of the most shocking secrets a family could hide, smash that like button and subscribe. Because this story will change how you think about family forever. Let's begin. My name is David Harrison, and I'm about to tell you a story that sounds like it came straight out of a soap opera. But I promise you, every word is true. I grew up in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in San Francisco. My father, Robert Harrison, was a venture capitalist worth approximately $200 million. My mother, Elizabeth, was a former model who became a philanthropist. I had an older sister, Victoria, who was the golden child, Harvard graduate, married to a lawyer, 2 perfect kids. And then there was me. Growing up, I always felt different. Not in a good way. My parents were cold with me in a way they weren't with Victoria. My father was distant. My mother seemed to regard me with a kind of permanent disappointment, like she was waiting for me to become someone I wasn't meant to be. I looked different too. I have dark hair and olive skin, while my father is blonde and my mother is pale. Everyone always said, "Oh, you must get that from your grandmother," or "recessive genes are so interesting." I never thought much of it. Genetics are weird. But deep down, I always felt like I didn't belong. Like I was an imposter in my own family. At 32 years old, I'm a successful software developer. I've built a decent life for myself, not as wealthy as my family, but comfortable. I have a girlfriend named Sarah, who I love very much. We've been together for 3 years, and we just started talking about getting married. Sarah suggested we both take an ancestry DNA test. It was supposed to be fun, finding out our ethnic backgrounds, discovering distant cousins, that kind of thing. I was hesitant, but Sarah was excited, so I agreed. "Why not?" I said. "Let's see where we really come from." Famous last words. The results came back about 6 weeks later. I was sitting at my desk at work when I got the notification. I pulled up the results on my phone. The test showed my ancestry to be Italian, Greek, and Middle Eastern. Predominantly Southern European and Mediterranean. That was odd. My family is entirely Northern European. German, Swedish, English. We don't have any Mediterranean ancestry in our known family tree. I stared at the results for a long time. There had to be a mistake. These DNA testing companies sometimes make errors, right? But then something else caught my attention. The website had flagged DNA matches. It said I had several matches with people who shared significant DNA with me. First cousins. Second cousins. People I'd never heard of. I clicked on the first match. It was a woman named Maria Rossi, 58 years old, from Los Angeles. The website indicated we likely shared a parent or grandparent. I didn't recognize the name at all. I did what any curious person would do. I looked her up on Facebook. I found her profile. She was a nurse. She had 2 adult children. She posted about cooking Italian food and spending time with her family. There was something about her face that struck me. Something familiar, but I couldn't place it. I scrolled through more matches. Another woman named Sofia Rossi, likely an aunt. A man named Marco Rossi, likely a cousin. An entire family I'd never heard of, all with the last name Rossi, all from California, all showing up as biological relatives on my DNA test. My heart started racing. I called Sarah immediately. "Something's wrong," I said. The DNA test is showing I have relatives I don't know about. It doesn't make sense. Maybe it's a mistake, Sarah suggested. You could contact the company. But I knew it wasn't a mistake. Deep in my gut, I knew something was very wrong. That night, I sat in my apartment and stared at the DNA results. I looked at Maria Rossi's photo again and again. And slowly, a horrible realization started to creep in. She had my eyes. The same dark brown eyes. The same shape. The same thickness to the eyebrows. And her children, they had the same features too. I called my mother that night. "Mom, I need to ask you something," I said. "Is there anything about my birth that's unusual? Anything you haven't told me?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Why are you asking?" my mother said slowly. "Just, is there anything?" "We'll discuss this when you come home for your father's birthday party next month," she said curtly. "This is not a phone conversation." But her tone told me everything I needed to know. There was something. There was a secret. And it was about to destroy my entire world. My mother's reaction told me everything. She knew. She'd always known. But what was she hiding? And more importantly, who was I really? My father's 70th birthday party was held at our family estate in Palo Alto. It was a Saturday evening, elegant and restrained, just like everything my family did. 100 guests. Catered food. A string quartet playing in the background. I arrived early, before the guests, specifically to confront my mother. I found her in the study, reviewing seating arrangements. "We need to talk," I said, closing the door behind me. My mother looked up. She was dressed impeccably, as always, in a cream-colored Chanel suit. But I could see something in her eyes. Guilt. Fear. Something she'd been carrying for a very long time. "Not now, David," she said. "We have guests arriving." "Now," I insisted. "You told me we'd discuss this." "Well, we're discussing it. What is it that you've been hiding about my birth?" My mother set down her papers. She took a long, shaky breath. "Sit down," she said. I didn't sit. I stood there, waiting. "Your father and we had fertility problems," she began slowly. "For years, we tried to conceive naturally. Nothing worked. We tried IVF. We tried everything. And we were devastated." "Okay," I said carefully. "We decided to adopt," she continued. "But we wanted to keep it secret. Your father was worried about what people would think, especially in his business circles. So we arranged a private adoption through a lawyer. Very hush-hush." My stomach dropped. "You're adopted?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Yes," my mother said quietly. "You've always been adopted. Since birth." I felt the room spin. "Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded. "Why did you let me grow up thinking I was actually your biological child? Why all the lies?" "Because we love you," my mother said, standing up. "You are our child. DNA doesn't change that." "But you lied to me," I shouted. "For 32 years, you lied to me about who I am. You let me believe I was something I wasn't. Do you know how many times I wondered why I didn't look like you? Why I felt out of place? And you knew. You always knew." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We were going to tell you," she said, "when you were 18. But your father, he didn't want to. He said it would confuse you. That it didn't matter because you were our son regardless. And as the years went on, it became harder to tell you. We didn't know how you'd react. How I'd react." I laughed bitterly. "I'm reacting exactly like this, betrayed, angry, confused about my entire identity." There was a knock on the door. Victoria poked her head in. "Mom, the guests are starting to arrive," she said. Then she noticed my face. "David, what's wrong?" "Ask her," I said, pointing at my mother. "Ask her what she's been hiding from me my entire life." Victoria looked confused. My mother sat back down, looking smaller, more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. "Come in and close the door," my mother said to Victoria. Victoria entered, concerned. "I've been keeping a secret from David," my mother explained. "David was adopted. I never told him. I was wrong." Victoria's face went pale. "What? You never told him? You knew?" I asked my sister, feeling another layer of betrayal. "I found out when I was in high school," Victoria admitted quietly. "I was looking for something in Mom's office and found adoption papers. I asked Mom about it, and she made me promise not to tell you. She said she and Dad would tell you when the time was right." 32 years is a long time to wait for the right time, I said coldly. My father entered the study then, wondering why we were all missing the party. "What's going on?" he asked. "David knows he's adopted," my mother said. My father's face hardened. "I see. And how are you taking it, son?" "How do you think I'm taking it?" I snapped. "I'm a complete stranger to myself. Everything I believed about my identity was a lie." "You're still our son," my father said, with the same cold distance he'd maintained throughout my entire life. "That hasn't changed." "It's changed for me," I said. "I want to know who I really am. I want to know where I came from. And I found something on a DNA test. There's a family in Los Angeles. Italians. Rossis. Maria Rossi is apparently my biological mother, or at least she shares significant DNA with me. I want answers. Real answers." My father's face went white. "You can't contact them," he said abruptly. "That's not part of the agreement." "What agreement?" I demanded. My father and mother exchanged a look. A look that said there was something even bigger I didn't know. "There was a closed adoption," my mother said quietly. "The birth mother signed away all rights. There was an agreement that there would be no contact. Ever." "That was her agreement," I said. "Not mine. I'm an adult. I have the right to know who I am." I turned and walked out of the study, leaving my family behind. I didn't go back to the party. I got in my car and drove straight to the airport. I was going to Los Angeles. And I was going to meet my real mother. My parents had lied to me for 32 years. And now I was about to meet the woman I should have known my entire life. But I had no idea what I was walking into, or what my parents had been hiding about my adoption. I booked a flight to Los Angeles that night. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Sarah. I just went. I had Maria Rossi's address from her Facebook profile. I knew where she lived, a small house in Echo Park. A working-class neighborhood. Very different from the wealthy enclave I'd grown up in. I rented a car at the airport and drove to her street. I parked across from her house, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. This was insane. I couldn't just show up on a stranger's doorstep and announce that I was her biological son. She had no idea I existed. She'd probably signed away her parental rights and moved on with her life. But I had to know. I had to understand where I came from. I got out of the car and walked to her front door. I knocked. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then I heard footsteps. The door opened. And I was staring at a female version of myself. Maria Rossi was 58 years old, with the same dark brown eyes, the same olive complexion, the same thick eyebrows. She had dark hair streaked with gray, pulled back in a simple ponytail. She was wearing scrubs. She'd just come home from her nursing shift. Her expression shifted from confusion to shock in about 2 seconds. "Can I help you?" she asked carefully. "Are you Maria Rossi?" I asked. "Yes." She looked uncertain, like she was trying to place me. "My name is David Harrison. I took a DNA test, and the results showed that we're biologically related. I believe you're my mother." Maria's hand went to her chest. She looked like she might faint. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible. I gave up my son for adoption 32 years ago. He was supposed to. They told me he was supposed to have a good life. A better life than I could give him." "That's me," I said. "I'm your son." She stared at me for a long moment. Then tears started streaming down her face. "Come inside," she said, stepping aside. Her house was small but warm. Family photos lined the walls. Pictures of her with 2 adult children, with grandchildren, with what appeared to be a husband, now deceased. I learned later he'd passed away 10 years ago. "Sit," Maria said, gesturing to a couch. "Please, sit down." We both sat. She was trembling. "I don't understand," she said. "Your parents were supposed to keep you closed adoption. You weren't supposed to know about me. And I wasn't supposed to know about you. That was the agreement." "I know," I said. "But I took a DNA test and found you. I wanted to know the truth." Maria took my face in her hands, studying it like she was trying to memorize every detail. "You look just like your father," she said softly. "Your biological father. Marco. He was my first love. We were so young. He was 20, I was 19. We thought we were going to get married, have this beautiful life together. But his family, they didn't approve of me. I wasn't from the right background. My parents were working-class immigrants. His family had money, status. They told him he couldn't be with me." She let go of my face and looked away. "When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified. Marco wanted to run away with me, have the baby, build a life together anyway. But his mother, she went to a lawyer. She threatened to have Marco arrested for statutory rape. Even though I was 19 and he was 20, she claimed I'd seduced him or something. She told me that if I didn't give up the baby, Marco would face criminal charges and his entire future would be destroyed." My blood ran cold. "So I gave you up," Maria continued, tears flowing freely now. "I signed the papers. I let you go. And I told myself it was the right thing to do. That you would have a better life. That you would be raised by people with money and stability and everything I couldn't give you." "Who was my father?" I asked. "Marco." "Yes. Marco Rossi. My cousin. We were both Rossis. That's how we met, actually. Through family gatherings. He was successful, handsome, everything my parents wanted for me. But his mother she was a monster. A woman named Catherine Harrison." I felt sick. "Catherine Harrison?" I asked. "That's my mother's maiden name." Maria nodded slowly. "Do you know what happened to Marco?" I asked. "After I was born." "He married someone his mother approved of," Maria said bitterly. "Someone wealthy, someone with the right connections. I saw it in the newspaper, his engagement announcement. And I accepted it. I thought he'd moved on. I thought he was happy. I tried to convince myself that everything had worked out for the best. But something about this story didn't add up." "Maria," I said carefully, "why didn't you fight this? Why didn't you go to the police if his mother threatened you?" She looked at me with sad, regretful eyes. "Because I was 19 years old and terrified. Because his mother was a powerful woman. Because I believed her when she said Marco would be destroyed if I didn't cooperate. And because I was poor and they were rich and I knew the law always sides with people like them." She paused. "But there's something else," she said. Something I've never told anyone. Something I found out years later. What? I asked. Marco never stopped looking for you. Or me. He hired a private investigator to find out where you'd been adopted. He wanted to know you. But the adoption was so tightly sealed, so legally protected, that even a private investigator couldn't break through. And by then, he was trapped in a marriage, stuck with a life his mother had chosen for him. Do you know where he is now? I asked. Maria pulled out her phone and showed me something. It was a news article from 3 years ago. The headline read, "Prominent venture capitalist Marco Rossi dies by suicide at 55. My world stopped. He was never happy, Maria said quietly. He spent his entire life in a prison his mother built for him. And he died alone, never knowing that his son was alive and searching for him too. I stared at the article. At Marco's photo. At a face I'd never seen before but somehow recognized. Because it was my face. I'd spent 32 years thinking my family was wealthy and privileged. But the real cost of that privilege was discovering that my biological father had died in despair, never knowing I existed. And somewhere in San Francisco, the woman who'd orchestrated all of this, my adoptive grandmother, was still alive. I stayed with Maria for 3 days. She told me everything. The full story of her relationship with Marco. How his mother, Catherine Harrison, had threatened her. How the adoption had been arranged through Catherine's lawyer. How Catherine had made sure the adoption was closed and sealed so that Maria and Marco could never find each other again. But there was something else. Something Maria had discovered years later, when she'd hired her own investigator to find Marco. Catherine Harrison wasn't just protecting her son from me, Maria said. She was protecting him from the truth about his own family. What do you mean? I asked. Catherine's own father had severe mental health issues. Depression, bipolar disorder, possibly schizophrenia. The records weren't clear because of privacy laws. But Catherine was obsessed with bloodline purity. She believed that mental illness ran in families, that it was genetic, and that she had to prevent it from spreading. She thought if Marco had children with someone like me, working class, immigrant, those children would inherit mental instability. I felt a chill run down my spine. She thought I would genetically damage her grandchildren, Maria continued. That's what this was really about. Not class. Not money. Not propriety. She was a eugenicist. She believed in bloodline purity. And she was willing to destroy her own son's happiness to maintain it. That's insane, I said. It was, Maria agreed. And it gets worse. After Marco died, a lawyer contacted me. Marco's lawyer. He left me something in his will. What? I asked. Maria went to a desk and pulled out an envelope. It was old, worn, like it had been handled many times. This is a letter, she said. Marco wrote it 3 years before he died. He left instructions that it be given to me if I ever surfaced, if I was ever found. He wanted you to know the truth too. I opened the letter with shaking hands. Maria, if you're reading this, then someone has found you. I pray it's our son. I pray that one day he knows the truth about where he comes from. I want him to know that I loved his mother. I want him to know that I tried to fight for him, but I was weak. I was a coward. I let my mother control me, and in doing so, I lost everything that mattered. My mother was a deeply disturbed woman. She raised me to believe that our family was somehow superior, that we had to protect our bloodline from contamination. She believed that your family, our family, carried genetic flaws that would doom our children. She was wrong. And I spent my entire life trying to prove her wrong, but I never had the courage to do it. I got married because my mother demanded it. I had 2 children because my mother demanded it. I built a business empire because my mother demanded it. And I was miserable every single day. If our son is reading this, I want him to know, you were loved. Before you were even born, you were loved. And I'm sorry I never got to know you. I'm sorry I was too weak to fight for you. I'm also sorry for the wealth you inherited. I know that must seem like a cruel joke. You got the money I couldn't spend, the freedom I couldn't experience, the life I couldn't live. Use it better than I did. Use it to break the cycle. Your father. Marco. I couldn't speak. I just held the letter, reading it over and over until the words blurred. There's more, Maria said gently. Marco left money in a trust for you. Quite a bit of money, actually. It's been sitting in an account for 3 years, waiting for you to claim it. When you turn 35, it automatically goes to charity if you haven't claimed it yet. That's 5 years from now. How much? I whispered. $15 million, Maria said. He wanted you to have the freedom he never had. I sat in silence for a long time. Everything I'd believed about my family, about my wealth, about my privilege, it was all built on lies, cruelty, and psychological abuse. My adoptive father, Robert Harrison, wasn't actually my biological family. But his mother, Catherine, had orchestrated my entire life based on a disturbed ideology about genetic purity. My biological father had spent his entire life imprisoned by that same woman, and he'd taken his own life rather than continue living under her control. And I had inherited money from both sides, money built on suffering, money accumulated through cruelty. What do you want to do? Maria asked gently. I want to confront them, I said. I want Robert and Elizabeth to explain what they did. I want them to tell me the truth about Catherine. I want to know everything. Be careful, Maria warned. People like your adoptive family, they're very good at protecting themselves, at rewriting history, at making you doubt what you know is true. I know the truth now, I said, and I'm not going to let them hide from it anymore. I flew back to San Francisco the next day, and I walked into my adoptive parents' house ready for war. I now knew the truth about my adoption, about the woman who'd orchestrated it, about my biological father's suicide. Now I had to confront the people I'd called family for 32 years and demand answers. But I had no idea they had one more devastating secret to reveal. I called my parents and asked them to meet me at their house. Just the 3 of us. No Victoria. No extended family. They seemed nervous. They knew something was coming. I sat them down in the same study where my mother had first confessed to the adoption. I met my biological mother, I said without preamble. Maria Rossi. And I learned the full story of my adoption. I want to hear it from you. Everything. My mother's face went white. My father's jaw clenched. How did you find her? My father demanded. That adoption was completely sealed. The records were supposed to be. DNA test, I interrupted. I took a DNA test, and what I found was a family history, not just biological relatives, but a story of cruelty, manipulation, and psychological abuse perpetrated by your mother, Catherine Harrison. My father stood up, agitated. You don't understand the situation. Then explain it to me, I said coldly. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your mother orchestrated a closed adoption to separate my biological parents because she was a eugenicist obsessed with bloodline purity. She thought my biological mother would contaminate your family. She thought I would inherit genetic flaws. And she was willing to destroy lives to prevent it. It was a different time, my mother said weakly. Catherine's views were extreme, but they were common among people of her generation and social class. That's not an excuse, I said. What she did was evil. And you too went along with it. You adopted me not out of love, but out of complicity with her plan. That's not true, my mother cried. We wanted you. We loved you. You lied to me for 32 years, I said. You let me grow up thinking I was something I wasn't. You let me feel like an outsider in my own family because you were too cowardly to tell me the truth.
And why?
To protect what? Your reputation. Your wealth. My father sat back down, looking defeated. There's something else, he said quietly. Something we never told you about the adoption. I waited. Catherine didn't just arrange for you to be adopted, my father continued. She also made sure that your biological father was paid to stay away. She gave Marco money, a lot of money, and made him sign a document agreeing that he would never seek contact with you or Maria. If he violated the agreement, the money would be taken back and he would face legal consequences. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. You're telling me that my biological father paid me off? I asked, my voice shaking. That he chose money over his own son? No, my mother said. He chose his own family's survival. Catherine threatened to destroy him if he didn't agree. She had connections. She had power. She could have had him prosecuted, imprisoned, destroyed. And he had no one to turn to. His own mother was the threat. I stood up and walked to the window, unable to look at them. My biological father killed himself 3 years ago, I said. Did you know that? There was silence behind me. He wrote a letter before he died. He wanted me to know that he loved me, that he wanted to fight for me but he was too weak, that he spent his entire life imprisoned by the woman who raised him, and he chose to end his life rather than continue living under her control. I turned around to face them. And you two have been sitting here, enjoying the wealth and privilege that this entire system built, while the people who were destroyed by it suffered in silence. David, my father said, standing up. We didn't know. Yes, you did. I shouted. You knew. You knew Catherine was a cruel, disturbed woman. You knew she'd manipulated the adoption. You knew there was a woman and a man who'd been separated because of her cruelty. And you did nothing. You accepted the money, accepted the inheritance, accepted your place in this family built on suffering. My mother was crying now, but I felt no sympathy. There's one more thing, my father said. Something Catherine wanted you to know if you ever found out about the adoption. What? I asked bitterly. She wants to meet you. She's 96 years old now, and she's dying. She asked that we tell you, if you ever found out the truth, that she has something to give you. Some kind of explanation. Some kind of legacy. I laughed bitterly. She wants to give me a legacy? The legacy of destroyed lives? The legacy of genetic pseudoscience and eugenics? The legacy of suicide and suffering? She's still your grandmother, my mother said quietly. No, I said. She's not. She's the woman who orchestrated my entire existence and then destroyed the lives of the two people who actually created me. I will not meet her. I will not listen to her explanations. And I will not be part of this family anymore. I walked toward the door. Where are you going? My father asked. Away from all of you, I said. I need time to figure out who I actually am. And I don't think I can do that while I'm still connected to this family, to this wealth, to this legacy of cruelty. David, please. My mother called after me. But I was already gone. I discovered the truth about my adoption, about my biological family, about the cruelty that had defined my existence. But now I had to face the biggest question. What was I going to do with this knowledge? And was meeting my dying grandmother the key to finally understanding myself? I didn't meet Catherine. Not immediately. Instead, I spent 6 months getting to know Maria and her family. I learned about the Rossi side of my heritage. I heard stories about Marco. I discovered I had cousins, aunts, uncles, an entire family I'd never known. And I learned what real family felt like. Not the cold, performative affection of the Harrisons, but genuine love and acceptance. I also started therapy. Real, deep therapy, to process the identity crisis of learning at 32 that everything I believed about myself was a lie. Sarah was incredibly supportive through all of it. She helped me navigate the confusion, the anger, the grief. And then one day, I got a call from my adoptive mother. "Your grandmother is in the hospital," she said. "The doctors say she has days, maybe a week. She keeps asking for you. She says she has something she needs to tell you before she dies." I didn't want to go. I had no desire to hear whatever justifications Katherine Harrison had constructed for destroying lives. But I also knew that if I didn't go, I would spend the rest of my life wondering what she wanted to say. So I went. Katherine was lying in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines that were barely keeping her alive. She was tiny, shriveled, like a ghost of a person. She had to be about 96 years old, and she looked every bit of it. When she saw me, she reached out her skeletal hand. "David," she whispered, "thank you for coming." I sat in the chair beside her bed but didn't take her hand. "I know what you did," I said. "I know about Maria. I know about Marco. I know you separated them because of your disturbed beliefs about genetic purity. I know you paid my father to stay away. I know you destroyed lives." Katherine nodded slowly, like she was accepting this without defense. "I was wrong," she said quietly. "I was profoundly, deeply wrong. And I've had 96 years to live with that knowledge." I didn't respond. I just waited for her to continue. "When I was young," Katherine said, "my father he had episodes. Severe mental episodes. He would rage. He would disappear for days. He tried to hurt himself. I watched my mother struggle to care for him while also raising me. And I decided that I would never let that happen to my family. I would make sure our bloodline stayed pure. That we stayed strong." She paused, struggling to breathe. "But purity," she continued, "is a lie. Strength is a lie. I thought I was protecting my family, but I was destroying it. I kept your father trapped in a life he didn't want. I forced him to marry a woman he didn't love. And I separated two people who could have built something beautiful together." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice hard. "Because I need you to know that I'm sorry," Katherine said. "Because I need you to know that my entire life was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be human. And because I need you to know that Marco was a good man. He suffered because of me, but he was good." She reached for a folder on her bedside table. "I left something for you," she said. "In my will. Money. A lot of it. The money I made through my investments, through my manipulation, through my control. I can't use it anymore. So I want you to have it." "I don't want your money," I said coldly. "I know," Katherine said. "But take it anyway. Use it to do something better than what I did with mine. Use it to help people instead of controlling them. Use it to break the cycle." She closed her eyes, exhausted from the effort of speaking. I sat there for another hour, not saying anything, just watching the woman who had orchestrated my entire existence lying helpless in a hospital bed. Before I left, Katherine opened her eyes one more time. "I'm sorry, David," she said, "for everything." And I believe she meant it. Katherine died 3 days later. 6 months after Katherine's death, I made a decision. I took the money she left me, approximately $30 million combined with Marco's trust, and I established a foundation. The Marco Rossi Foundation, dedicated to providing mental health support to underprivileged communities. In honor of the father I never knew. I also changed my name legally. I'm now David Rossi, not David Harrison. I wanted to honor my biological family, the family that had been erased from my life. Sarah and I got married. We had a small ceremony with Maria and her family on one side, and a few select people from my adoptive family on the other. Victoria came. My parents sent their regrets but a generous gift. I maintained a relationship with my adoptive parents, but a distant one. They were part of my life, but they were not my family in the way that matters. As for my biological family, the Rossis, they became everything to me. Not because of DNA, but because they chose to love me. They chose to welcome me, even though I was a stranger who appeared out of nowhere claiming to be their cousin. That's what family really is. Not bloodline. Not purity. Not control. Family is choice. Family is love. Family is showing up for each other even when it's hard. I was raised in wealth and privilege, but I didn't find my real inheritance until I was 32 years old. And that inheritance was not money. It was the knowledge of who I really am, and the freedom to become who I choose to be. Sometimes the greatest discoveries come from the smallest things: a DNA test, a curious click, a willingness to ask questions. I came from two families. One gave me privilege. One gave me love. And it took losing one to truly understand the value of the other. If you're struggling with your own identity, if you're questioning where you come from or who you are, know this: your worth is not determined by your bloodline or your family name or your bank account. Your worth is determined by the choices you make and the love you give. If this story moved you, if it made you think about what family really means, leave a comment and tell me, what would you have done in my situation? And don't forget to subscribe to Buried Secrets for more stories about identity, family, and the incredible power of truth. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. I'm David Rossi, and this is my story.